Happy Friday! We made it to the end of another week. I'm so relieved. I say that, but I still actually have a whole lot of work to do, so it really doesn't even matter that it's Friday because I've got a lot of other things. Hey, Kathy, how you doing? Kathy, come help me take care of all of the things. I have so much work to do, and I'm not complaining. I like to be busy, but dang, sometimes it's just like, I wish that I had like 2 or 3 more of me just to get things done so that I could spend my Saturday actually relaxing instead of thinking about all of the things that I still need to do. Don't like it when that happens. How about you guys? I'm sure there are a lot of you out there that are feeling that way too. Hey Ruth, how are you doing? Hi Nicole. Hi. Sherry says hello from Flanagan, Illinois. Hi. How are ya? Any help you can offer? Well, would you happen to have any elves? Elves, fairies, that work for really free. I was going to say cheap, but really free works as well. Hi, Anita. How you doing? Miss Julie. All right, guys, so let's talk about today's project, okay? So I am part of the Jewel Loom community, which is another Facebook group outside of the Sarah Ellis Designs community. There's the Jewel Loom group, which Juliana Avalar hosts, and of course the Jewel Loom and her looms, that's her company. And this past year, Juliana and I have known each other for a very, very long time, and a houseboy. Ooh, I could take a houseboy. Can you make that a double? I'd like a double houseboy, please. So Juliana and I call her Jules. Jules and I have been friends for a very, very long time. We met through the industry years ago. And she's the very first one who introduced me to the loom, which I actually fell madly in love with. And it's been one of those things that I have kept with me throughout my journey as a jewelry maker because it's very therapeutic for me. I find that whether it's with the beads or if I'm doing a fiber project, that I find it very therapeutic. It's very rhythmic, so you can get in the groove and kind of zone out, which is a lot of people feel that way about, you know, beading off of a loom, and so I totally get it. I can appreciate that. And though we have that group, and you know, I've been working with her for the past year. I completely forgot to mention that part. So Jules and I have been working together for a while now. She brought me on as a design member of her Jewel Loom company, and since then we've been working on projects, and some pretty exciting projects actually that I'm hoping, fingers crossed, you guys are going to start to see the beginnings of as early as next week. So we're kind of collaborating on releasing something that I'm really, really excited about. But I wanted to kind of incorporate the Sarah Ellis Designs community into that because I feel like there's a lot of you here that maybe don't know anything about looming. You've never used a loom. Maybe you're intimidated by them, or maybe you've thought about it, but you never knew where to get started. And so I thought this would be a good way to kind of bridge the two communities together and maybe spark your interest in starting something that maybe you've never done before. And hopefully I'll be able to answer any of the questions that you've got, and maybe I can entice you to come and join that community, that Facebook group, and get started with looming, because also on Fridays, I do a second Facebook Live. We do 2 Facebook Lives with Jewel Loom. We do one on Wednesdays, and then in the afternoons here on Fridays, we do a second Facebook Live. So it's really a fun place. Like, we have a lot of fun and laugh and giggle here, and I love that. It's that same energy happens over on the Jewel Loom group, because those Facebook Lives, it's me and Jules together most of the time. And if you like to just have a good time and giggle and, you know, learn something but still giggle and have a good time, it's a fun place to come hang out, because we always end up off topic just laughing about crazy things. So I encourage you to come and join us, and let this be one of those projects that kind of sparks your creativity and maybe entices you, right? So what I've got to use for today is the original Jewel Loom, guys. This is the original. This was Juliana's baby. This was like the very first loom that came out. This is, you can get this through Bead. So those of you who don't know, Juliana is also a Bead designer, which is how she and I ended up meeting each other in the first place. This is the original Jewel Loom. It's a travel-sized loom. The one that I got comes in a pack, a little package. When you buy it at Michael's, I think you get the packaging. I'm not sure if you get the packaging like this everywhere else, because I've got a lot of the other ones that came in like the plastic blister pack. Regardless, it's lightweight, so you can just throw it into your bag and take it anywhere with you, which is really cool. A long time ago, before things were turned into a disaster with the airport, you could take your loom with you and your needles. Now they won't let you take your needles, but it used to be that you could sit on the plane and you could actually loom while you were flying to wherever you were going. Some will let you take your needles, but some will not. So I don't necessarily encourage that, but definitely if you're going to fly somewhere, check ahead. Find out if you can take your needle with you, because this is a cool thing to sit and work on if you're traveling. When we're traveling again, I just now realized we're not really traveling much. So regardless, you can do it in the car, not while you're driving, as a passenger, only as a passenger. But the third reason I wanted to include a Jewel Loom project in one of our Facebook Lives is because also those of you who have signed up for Destination North Pole with the Jesse James beads, everybody gets a Jewel Loom in their Destination North Pole package, right? And Juliana and I are going to be teaching a class for the Destination North Pole. A lot of people are opening their boxes. Their boxes are starting to get there, and they've got their loom. So for those of you who got your loom already and you're ready to start playing on it, this is a good place to start right here. I'm going to show you guys today how to put together a ring. This is fairly simple, okay? And I'm going to go slow for the first part, and then I'm going to, I'm going to speed up a bit, because we are going to do the full length of a ring, which is not very big considering, the measurement of your finger and that whole bit. But I want to show you how to take it all the way off of the loom and connect the two ends. That's the part where people get kind of stumped. So I definitely want to make it all the way through. So buckle up, because this is going to be a long one, okay? At the end, though, I'm going to show you some of my other loom projects that weren't necessarily done here on this, and some fiber projects, just to kind of give you an idea for those of you who are new to this whole concept. As far as beads are concerned, I'm going to be using size 8 seed beads for mine, but you can use size 6s for yours, 6s or 8s. I feel like that's a really good size to start with. Don't be overly ambitious and feel like you should start with the size 11s until you've kind of gotten the hang of things, just because they're a little bit smaller. So yeah, I feel like there's something else I need to tell you guys. Oh, I have an affiliate link, obviously, since I am part of the design team for Jewel Loom. It is, I believe that it is posted. I think Joan dropped it. I'm not sure if she did or not, but I will post it in the group. It is also posted with the event notifications for today's Facebook Live. So if you're interested in looking at the looms or any of the other things that Juliana has on the Jewel Loom website, you can use my affiliate link. You don't have to, but I appreciate it if you do. Always, you guys know how much I appreciate that, but it's not necessary, okay? Gwen says, can I make my own loom? Gwen, you absolutely can. Let me tell you. So obviously I want you to purchase the product because, but I've got to tell you, just being completely transparent and honest with you, there are several that you can actually put together yourself over on Pinterest. I've seen it done with picture frames. You can just put together wood and some nails. You can make your own loom. But these guys are these are pretty affordable. And there's a baby one as well. So today's project, that's another thing right before we get into it. I'm going to use the original Jewel Loom for this. There's a baby loom. You can do this exact same project on it. You can do this on the Small Goddess Loom. I'll show you one of those in a little while. You can also do this project on the Moon Goddess Loom. I'll show you one of those as well. So you can, basically what I'm saying is you can do this project on whichever loom you want, other than maybe the large goddess or the fiber loom. But we're going to focus on the original. Robin says she's used a lot of different looms and she loves the Jewel Loom the best. Me too. Since I got hooked, I have tried other looms, and I gotta say, this one is my favorite. And I'm not just saying that because I work for Bead and for Jewel Loom. I'm saying it because it really is so convenient, whereas some of the other ones just seems like there's too many working parts and it gets frustrating. This is pretty straightforward. Okay, so I'm gonna show you how to warp the loom. That's the strands that go this way, and then I'm going to show you how to weave in your beads, okay? So let's get started with this, guys. Now, I may have, hold on. I know about the sound, and unfortunately, guys, because I'm having to use seed beads today, we're gonna use a bead mat. So I apologize for the ugly yellow, okay? But it's a necessary evil for today. Okay, so let me unplug this. That may help a little bit. Okay, so the Jewel Loom, for those of you who are just now getting started with your Jewel Loom, it comes flat and it comes with a rod in your packaging, okay? That just blew your ears off. Ginger, I'm sorry. All right, so you attach the rod by putting the ends, oh gosh, you guys, into the holes, okay? And so in order to do that, you have to bend just slightly, okay? I want you to watch, okay? Look from the side. This is flat, this is straight. This is bowed just tiny bit, okay? I'm not making a huge bend. Do not snap your loom in half to attach your rod. You do have to give it a little bit of a bend like that, okay? So I take my rod and I put it into one of the holes here, okay? Then to get it in, I have to just slightly give it a bend and pop that one in. So you can see how much of a curve here. Please do not snap your loom in half trying to wiggle this rod in there, okay? It's a very gentle, slow movement. Otherwise, you're going to snap this right in half. Do not do that. It also helps if you hold it this direction. I was holding it this way just to kind of show you. But if you're going to be doing this yourself, you probably want to hold it this direction to attach the rod. And a lot of times I'll put my rod in this one, and then I'll push the loom like up against me. You can push it up against your belly, up against your chest, and then just very gently kind of create that curve, right? And put the other end of the rod in, right? So use your body as leverage, but don't snap it in half, okay? The rod is super duper important, okay? And if you have trouble getting the rod into the loom, you may need to take your pliers and just barely give that little piece of wire right there a very slight, you know, move with your pliers, okay? I'm not talking about major cranking down on it or anything like that. Just a little hair movement might help. So, or you can just reach out. If you're having trouble getting your rod into your loom, just let me know. Okay, now on the back of the loom, we've got buttons. Okay, we've got a button here and a button here. This is where we're going to tie on our thread. Now, as far as thread is concerned, I'm going to be using Wildfire for this project, okay? Wildfire is my go-to weaving thread when I'm using seed beads. If you are partial to Fireline or Dandelion or Nymo, you certainly can use those instead. But I'm definitely a fan of the Wildfire.
That doesn't mean that's the only thing you can use, okay? That just means that's what we're going to be using to create our warps and do our weaving with for today's project. You actually can warp your loom with other things. You can warp this with hemp, which is one of my favorite things to use on it. You can use cotton cord, nylon cord, leather. There are so many different things. As a matter of fact, for the Destination North Pole project, we're actually using leather to warp our loom with. So you've got that to look forward to. But today I'm going to show you how to use the Wildfire, okay? Now, I'm using blue because it matches my beads. Just wanted to show you. My beads are this kind of iridescent blue color, and they're a size 8. You can use a size 8, use a size 6, whatever you're comfortable using, okay? And any color of the Wildfire that you want to use as well. It doesn't really make much of a difference, okay? All right, so I'm going to turn my loom over, and I'm going to start on one end. Makes no difference which end. Just pick a button on the back, okay? And I like to go ahead and start a loop on my hand. So I just take the Wildfire and make a loop, right? I've just made a loop. I'm going to take my ends and I'm going to double up like a surgeon's knot. So I'm just going to take the end through there. I'm looping the end through twice. Okay. Now I'm going to take my loop and put it on the button. And gosh, blue was a bad choice for you guys because it's hard to see that blue against the blue, and then pull so that you've tied your thread to your button. And now I want to double knot that. Okay. So I'm going to take my ends again and just creating another loop and through once and through twice and then pull. Okay. I've tied my Wildfire nice and secure to my button, and you want to be sure that it's secure. So in order to make sure, give it the tug test. You really want to pull on this because number one, you want your knot. You can see underneath there, see my knot? I want my knot up here towards the top of the loom. And you want it to be nice and tight so that it's not going to come undone, because you're really going to have to use lots of tension. Okay. Lots and lots of tension. All right. Also, make sure that you don't accidentally loop your thread around the back of the rod that's sticking out the back. Okay. Okay. Now, for my ring, I'm going to do, I thought I was going to do 4, but I think I'm just going to stick with 3 rows of beads. Let me show you just a little snippet. This is not a finished ring, but this is just going to kind of give you an idea of the width of mine. Okay. So this is three rows of beads. You can see 1, 2, 3, right? If you want to do a little bit larger of a ring, you can go ahead and do 4. But you always want to warp with 1 more thread than beads. So to do a 3 bead ring, I need 4 warp threads, right? Because the 4 threads are going to create 3 spaces for me to put my beads in. All right, so now I'm going to take my thread, okay, and I'm just going to come up to where all of these grooves are, and I'm going to place my thread into one of those grooves. And it doesn't matter which one, just pick one, okay? Any of the grooves will work. If you want to work in the center or you want to work over here towards the edge, it doesn't make any difference. The only time it's ever going to make a difference is if you want to warp the entire loom, then you do want to start way over here on the edge, okay? But you just want to place your Wildfire or your thread between the grooves here, okay? Now, I'm going to keep the tension. This is number 1, guys. Keep the tension on that thread. You can hear it. That's how tight I'm pulling, okay? Pull that thread and come down here to the other side and pop that thread into a groove that's pretty close to right across from the other one, okay? Does the loom come with needles? I don't know. It may come with 1 or 2 needles, but I'm not sure. I'm not 100% certain about that. Okay, so come down here, place it into one of the grooves, and you can, it's super tight, okay? And I'm pulling really hard. You can see I've got my hand. Now I'm going to come to the back. I'm going to loop around the button back here, okay? Now I'm going to take my thread back up here to these grooves, and I'm going to go into the next groove. Actually, I'm going to skip one. Okay, so that I've got enough room for my bead. Now, regardless of, since you're using a size 6 or a size 8 seed bead, skip a groove and then place your thread. But keep in mind that you always want your grooves, or I'm sorry, your warps, the spaces in between there, to accommodate the biggest bead in your design, okay? So if I were using a larger bead, I'd obviously need to skip more spaces, okay? Keeping that tension nice and tight, bringing this thread all the way up here to the other end where we started, skip a groove, place my thread into that groove, okay? Come around here to the back, wrap around the back button, and then back up to the front, skipping a groove, okay? Coming all the way down here to the end, same thing, skipping a groove, wrap around the back button, okay? I've got 2 empty spaces for beads. I need to go one more, okay? So skipping a groove, coming all the way back up here to the top. Whoops. Okay. Now I've got I have 4 warps, but I have 3 spaces. So 3 beads will fit in between those spaces, right? Okay. Now come to the back again. Make sure you have not let go of any of your tension. I like to wrap around the button a few times. Okay. And then hold on to it so you can come and trim off. I needed to get my scissors. I'll have to use my cutter tool instead. Okay, now we want to tie a knot around our button. Again, don't let go of your tension though, okay? So hold on and tie yourself a knot, just another loop around your button. Pull that nice and tight. There's our tail. Hold on. You can see there's our tail. I just don't want you to get confused. Okay, once you've gotten a good knot around, if you do not skip the grooves, is that more for a size 11 or 15? Yes, it is. Okay, so sometimes I take my tail and go underneath all those threads, right? And tie a loop here and just pull down. Whatever's going to help you get that thread nice and secure, okay? A couple of knots is really all you need, but you want to really be sure that it's not going to come undone. There's nothing worse than having everything slip and come undone, okay? Now, when we come back to the front, my threads are nice and tight still. You can hear, okay? Now, we got to take the rod out. Do not start beading until you take this rod out. This is going to help give you even more tension in your threads. It has to come out, okay? So I like to take my finger, put my finger over the threads that are up here in the groove so they don't slip out. Again, I'm pushing the bottom of the loom kind of up against my body and just pushing just slightly to pop out the rod, okay? Just a tiny, tiny movement, guys. It does not take a lot. Don't snap those rods. Now I have even more tension. You can hear it. I have even more tension in my threads. This part is the most important part of the entire process. You want to be sure that you get those warps, that's what these are called, nice and tight. Do not be afraid to pull the heck out of your Wildfire, okay? Do not be afraid to pull nice and tight as you're going back and forth. If this is loosey-goosey, your design is going to fall apart. So this part may take you some practice, and that's okay. That's okay, all right? And occasionally I have, I'll warp it, take the rod out, and this whole outer edge, this last warp on the edge is loose, and I take it off and do the entire thing again. So just know that it is a process. It's not a hard process. It just takes practice to figure out how much tension you've got to use to keep those warps nice and tight, okay? But now we're ready to rock and roll. We've got our warps in place and we're ready to get started. So I'm going to dump out my beads and have those ready to go. Okay, doesn't take a lot to do a ring. And I'm going to thread my needle. Now I'm using a Jewel Loom needle, which is a long needle. It is the same, almost the same width as the largest part of your Jewel Loom, which makes it ideal, right? Did you take the rod out on the straight end or the bent end? Well, they should both be slightly bent. So if yours is not, I would say on the straight end, but they should both be bent just a little bit. I mean, they don't have to have big, huge bends in them, but you can see like mine's bent on this end and it's also bent on this end, right? Okay. Now I'm going to thread my needle, and a little trick for threading my needle, I take my pliers and smash down the end of the Wildfire because it has that thermal coating on it and it makes it go nice and flat so you can very easily thread your needle. Okay, and that'll work with any needle, by the way. That little trick doesn't just have to be a Jewel Loom needle. All right, now you want to give yourself about, I don't know, 3 feet of Wildfire. It doesn't take a whole lot, just whatever you're comfortable working with. Okay, and we didn't talk about this part yet, but let's talk about it right now. So one of the things you have to figure out is how long you need your beaded section to be, because you want it to fit your finger. So what I recommend doing, and what Jules recommends doing, because we did rings over on her group as well, is to take a measuring, you know, like a measuring tape that you use for, you know, sewing. You know, one of the loose ones. I've got one here. I just can't seem to find. Oh, here it is. So one of these guys, right? Take one of these guys, put it on your finger, mark out, just decide which finger you want your ring to fit on, right? Mark it out, and then remember that number, because that's how long you want your ring to be, right? If you don't have one of these, you need to take a piece of paper, same thing, just a strip of paper, and mark it, and then use that as your guide for measuring. Okay, hold on a second. I'm going to go back here because I see something. I saw something. Susie says my rod is stuck. I can't get it out. Okay, so if your rod is stuck, you just need to bend just a little more, okay? Put your fingers down on the warps and bend, and you'll see how my threads separate when I bend, but I'm not bending a lot. If you're really struggling with one end, flip it around the other direction and try the other end. Sometimes there's a sweet spot with one over the other, okay? All right, now I need my ring to be about, let's see. My ring needs to be about 2.5 inches, okay? And from previous experience, I know that that's gonna be about 20 rows of beads here, okay? But you do kind of have to play around with it and figure out your own measurement for it. Okay, now to get started, I just want to anchor my needle and my thread to my loom. So what I'm going to do is I'm starting over here on the left, okay? We always work left to right with a loom. I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to go underneath the first warp, over the second, under the third, over the fourth, just like that. Okay? And then I'm going to pull. Okay? I'm going to leave myself a little bit of a tail here. Give yourself about 5 inches of tail, right? And then I want to go back the other direction. So I'm going to go right to left. This time I'm going under, over, over. Okay? And pull. And I'm not pulling super, super tight. This is just kind of anchoring our thread, right? So don't squeeze those together. Don't do this, because you don't want to distort the spacing. You just want to make sure that your thread is nice and anchored there so it doesn't slip out while you're working, okay? All right, now, again, always working left to right. I'm going to pick up 3 seed beads, okay? Take my needle underneath all of my threads. Okay, I'm going underneath all of the warps. I'm going to pick up 1, 2, 3 seed beads. Okay, still underneath the warps. I'm going to pull my thread. I'm holding those beads in my hand. Okay, this should all be underneath those warps. Now I'm going to use my finger, my left hand, to place those beads right up into the group, or right into the empty spaces between the warps, right? Each bead is going to fit right in between those spaces. I'm just holding it there with my finger. Now I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to go back through these beads, but this time I'm going to go over all of the warps. So I'm going back this direction. So now I'm working right to left. Okay, I'm going to go into the first bead, into the second bead, into the third bead. And you want to be sure that you are going over the top of those warps. So you should be able, in the spaces between your beads, you should be able to see your needle. Okay, so you're creating a sandwich with the Wildfire or the thread, whichever one. Okay. And then pull your needle out. Your bead should stay in those spaces. Okay. And now your needle's back over here on the left-handed side. Okay. Now we're ready to add the next row. You're going to go underneath. Okay. Pick up your beads. 1. Whoops. 1. All right. 1, 2, 3. Oh my goodness. Okay, there we go. 3 beads. Okay, and I'm underneath the warps. I'm going to pull my needle through the beads, holding the beads in my hand, pulling the thread, pulling all the slack out of the thread. Okay, when I get most of the slack out, I'm just going to pop those beads up into the spaces where they go, slide them up here next to these beads, pull the thread. Okay, but now I have to secure those in place. So I got to take my needle and I'm going to go back through those beads the opposite direction over the top of the warps. So first we were under the warps, then we go over the warps. That's what creates a Wildfire sandwich, right? Got Wildfire on the bottom, your beads, and Wildfire on the top, and your warps are in the middle with your beads. That's what's going to hold your beads in place. Okay, and then pull. And that's it. That's all there is to it. We're just going to keep doing that until we work up the length that we need for our ring. Okay. So going underneath the warps, 3 more beads. Okay, onto my needle. Pulling the slack out. Popping those beads right into place. Okay, taking my needle back through. Pull the needle, pull the thread. And there you go. Okay. Now you want to pull tight. You don't want to like manhandle this and like get crazy tight, but you want to be sure that there's no daylight in between there. Okay. You want to pull so that everything snugs into place. Okay. We're just going to keep going. Probably would make more sense to put my beads over here on this side. Like, why am I hurting myself? Why am I making this more difficult than it needs to be? So pick up 3 beads. Keep your beads on the left-handed side. Go underneath. Robin says I make it look so easy. It really is, I promise. And those of you who are getting frustrated, just remember to give yourself grace. Don't stop so easy. Okay, you can master this. This is not hard, I promise. It's just a new thing, right? You got to challenge yourself to find something new to try and do. And it just takes a little bit. You're not going to get it exactly the first time, you know? You gotta Got to be patient with yourself. Got to be patient with the tool. You got to be patient with the beads. Takes lots of grace to make jewelry. Remember, everybody has to start somewhere when you begin to learn something new. And once you get it, then you get it. I'm going to move all these beads over. Okay. I wouldn't show you guys something that I didn't have faith in you that you couldn't do. I promise. I'm never going to show you something that I don't believe in my heart of hearts that you can accomplish. You absolutely 100% can do this, okay? You can get the rod in, you can get the rod out, you can get your warps tight. These are things that you absolutely can do. You just got to kind of breathe a little bit. And if you need to walk away from it for a minute, walk away from it for a minute. But don't give up. Don't give up. If you give up, you're only cheating yourself out of the possibility that you could fall in love with something, right? Underneath, pull the thread. Okay, pop those beads right up into place. Push them up there with your finger. Take your needle, go back through. I have faith in you guys. Suzanne says, the difficult part for me is finishing off a bracelet. I think everybody struggles with that. That's the next hurdle for people. So the first hurdle is usually getting the warps tight. The beading part usually comes pretty easily. It does take a little practice just till you get used to it. And then the biggest problem that people face next is, you know, trying to figure out how to finish things. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to finish off the ring because there's no hardware involved. Now, you can't do it with a bracelet, but there are so many options. All right, so I'm just going to keep going, okay? And I am going to have to speed up a little bit or we're going to be here forever with this part. But the good news is that you can always watch this on replay. It gets moved over to my YouTube channel, so you can watch it there if you want to. And you can always reach out and ask questions. You can also join the Jewel Loom community. I'm over there. We're actually oh, there's Miss Juliana, guys. There's Miss Juliana. So I didn't know she was going to be here. Wow, that was ridiculous, but it's because I love her so much. So if you are having problems, come join the Jewel Loom community because, as I was going to say before I got distracted with Miss Jules there, that this afternoon we're actually having a question and answer session. So if you've got questions, about the loom or how to do it, it's a great place to come and ask your questions. The community is a great place to join because it's all focused on looming, whether it's with beads or with fibers, and the community is a great place to, you know, ask your questions, vent your frustrations, you know, and there's a lot of knowledge in that community. There are beginners all the way up to crazy, insane professionals. So no question is a dumb question. Come and ask your questions. You know, if you're having trouble, the Jewel Loom group is the place to be, for sure. Even if you've never loomed before and you're just thinking about it, let the group be a place to come and, like, you know, help you make up your mind. All right, so I'm just going to keep on going. Okay. This is funny. Juliana shows up and I'm like, oh no, I hope I'm doing a good job. It makes me nervous. It's so funny. What's funny is, I've done a million Facebook Lives, and it's funny the little things like that get my, that get my anxiety going. It's like, oh no, the boss is here. Better be doing a good job. Better be showing it right. Doing it right. Tina says wine is a necessity, not an option. And chocolate. I would agree with that. Yeah. And guys, it's really just a really fun place to come and hang out. Not that the Sarah Ellis Designs community isn't a fun place to hang out. It totally is. But it's so fun to to get to hang out with Jules, and you know, and it's funny because you learn something. I learn something every single time, and sometimes I don't even realize I've learned anything until afterwards, and I'm like, oh, I learned that. You're always awesome. I don't know about that, Jane. Jane, I think you're biased. I think you're a little biased. All right, so I'm just going the same, guys, and just doing the exact same thing. So I'm picking up 3 seed beads, okay, every time, not changing it. Picking up 3 seed beads, going underneath those warps. I like to pull mine off of the needle, pull out the slack, and then just pop them right into place, okay? Then take your needle and go back the other direction. And pull. Okay. And if you have accidentally gone underneath the warps, when you're going back this direction, okay, if you accidentally go underneath the warps instead of over the warps, your beads will fall out. There's no question there, okay? So don't feel like, oh, did I do it? Did I not do it? The beads are going to tell you. The beads are absolutely going to tell you because they won't stay. Once you get over here to the other side and you pull your thread, your beads will just fall out. So you don't have to worry so much about whether you did it right or not. You did it if the beads stay where they're supposed to be. That's how you know. Okay. Okay. Does chocolate go with what? Chocolate goes with everything, Tina. What kind of question is that? Jeez. Chocolate goes with absolutely everything. All right, I'm going to count my rows here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So we're getting pretty close. That's why I figured starting with a ring is a good project because it doesn't take a lot of beads to do this. Jane has a moonshine still in her backyard? This is new information to me. This is new information. Okay. So, again, just a couple more rows, and then I'm going to show you guys a couple of things that you need to do to this before you take it off of the loom, okay? We have moonshine everywhere. It's Tennessee. I know, but just the thought that maybe that Jane has that in her backyard, that's I mean, I know I could just go out back and wander around the woods and find one, but I mean, if you know somebody, it's a little different. I say that. I'm totally not a drinker, guys. Totally not. I'll have a glass of wine now and then, but that's pretty much the extent of it. I've never had moonshine, I don't think. So if Jane does, maybe this is an opportunity to try something new for me. Everybody will be standing around telling me to give myself grace with that first slug, slurp, sip, whatever you want to call it. First shot. All right. I'm going to count my rows one more time because I lost count. So let me pop these beads into place here. Go back through with my needle. All right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. Whoops. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. All right. I'm going to do 3 more rows just for good measure. Because I know this will fit on at least one of my fingers. Terry says it burns all the way down. See, I don't know how I feel about that. That's why I'm not, I'll drink a cocktail, but I will not just take a shot of something that hasn't been mixed and is fruity. Unless I'm sick, and then like, you know, a shot of whiskey is okay, but that's on a very rare occasion. All right, we're going to do one more And then we're going to talk about some of the things that need to happen here, okay? All right, it's my last row. I'm going to pull that tight. Okay, there we go. Okay, now I'm going to move all these beads out of the way, and we need to reinforce, okay? And we definitely need to reinforce our last row. And we need to come back up here and reinforce our first row. How do we know what the length should be? So the length for a ring, you're just going to take your measuring tape and measure out your finger for whichever finger you want to use, right? Whichever finger you want it to fit on, just mark that and then just measure against that to make sure that it's going to be the right size. Okay. And then you also have to take into consideration like the size of your beads, because they do take up different amounts of space too, right? Or you can just take a sheet of paper, right? Just take a little strip of paper and mark it, or a piece of tape will do the same thing. And then you can just tape it down and use that, right? If you use the tape, you can tape it. If you use a little piece of paper, you can tape it down to something too. So, okay. So what we need to do is we need to reinforce. All I'm going to show you how to do right now is to reinforce the last and the first row. However, I normally would reinforce the entire thing. Okay, that's just my personal preference. A lot of times I feel like even if it's a really long bracelet that I need to reinforce the entire thing. But I don't want you guys to be here forever. So I'm not going to reinforce all of it, but I am going to show you how to do that on the last and the first row. Okay. So to reinforce, our needle, or rather our thread is coming out to the left. Okay. I'm going to take my needle. This thread is actually going over the top of this outer warp. Okay. I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to kind of push those beads down just slightly and put my needle back into those beads going underneath the warps. Okay. And pull. Okay. Now you can see my threads coming out the bottom underneath the outer warp. This time I'm going to go back through and I want my needle to come out the top, over the top of the warp. Okay. That is how we are going to reinforce. And you want to do that once or twice. Okay. I'm going to do it another time. I'm going to go underneath. Pull. And then back through. Okay. That ensures that that last row is not going to go anywhere. I can't pull it out of space now. It's nice and secure. Okay. We need to do the same thing up here. And so normally I'm going to undo this thread that we wove in here to anchor. I'm going to pull that out, and I'm actually going to use my tail as my thread to reinforce. However, if I were doing my normal reinforcing, what I would do is I would continue. So we reinforce this row. I would jump up to the next row, reinforce, jump up to the next row, reinforce. I would make my way all the way back up here to this end. Okay, so my needle and thread would be coming out right here where my tail is coming out after I reinforced everything, and I would then just weave in my tail and cut it off and not use my tail for reinforcing. But since I'm not going to reinforce the entire thing because it takes a little bit of time, I'm going to take my needle off of this thread and thread it on to the tail. Okay. And just do the same kind of reinforcing on this very first row. Okay. Okay, now I'm actually going to tie this one off. So I'm going to go back through. Okay. I'm going to sew into the next row. Okay. And I'm going to just do a half hitch knot. I thread my needle. You can see I thread that needle. I'm not in a bead or anything. I'm just going behind the warp with my needle. And then I'm just going to make a loop. Whoops. And I'll didn't mean for it to come off of the needle, but and then pull just to tie a knot right there. Again, this should have stayed on the needle, but it slipped out. And then I'm going to thread back through and trim off. Okay, so I'm just threading. Where are my pliers? I'm just weaving in my tail, and the knot is just some extra security. You just don't want to cut where, oh goodness, where your knot is. Okay, so I'm actually going to cut it over here on this end. Okay, now I'm going to come in and cut that off. Okay, now we don't have a tail. We only have the one tail. That's our working thread down here. We need to keep our working thread because this is what we're going to use to secure the two ends of our ring together. You guys do need an AA meeting. I'm watching these comments go by. You guys are cracking me up. All right, so I'm going to thread my needle back on to my working thread here. Maybe. There we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to take this off of the loom, okay? And to do that, all you got to do is cut it. I come to the back. I hold the work in my hand because the tension, remember, this is like spring loaded, so you got to be careful, right? So hold everything in place. And then, oh no, that's why we reinforced. Did you see that where my beads had separated? Luckily, I pushed them back into place, but that's why you would reinforce the entire thing so that that doesn't happen. Okay. Now, going to trim some of this off. Don't cut everything short yet. Okay. You just want workable lengths of thread here. So here's what I've got. I've got my crazy threads coming out the bottom and out the top. Okay. And I've got 4. Now, what I want to do is I want to tie these into knots, okay? So I'm going to take the first 2, okay? It doesn't matter which end you start with. And don't tie your working thread into this. Just kind of keep it out of the way. Take 1 and 2, okay? Tie a knot, bring that knot down to the surface of the beads, okay? I'm going to tie it a second time to make a nice knot out of it. Okay. Now I'm going to take 2 and 3. So this one's already tied into a knot, but I'm going to take it anyway and tie it to 3. Bring that down. Okay. Now I'm going to take 3 and 4 and tie those together. And I'm going to hold this up so you can see. See those knots? They're just little tiny knots, but I've tied all of my warp threads together. Okay. Now I'm going to come in with a little bit of glue. I'm using hypo cement, but you can use whatever. Fast drying glue is better than the hypo cement, to be honest with you, but this is just what I have within reach. So I'm just going to put some hypo cement over those knots and let that sit for a minute while I tie the other ends too. Okay. Eventually we are going to cut all this off, but we need to tie the knots first. Okay. So again, I'm going to take 1 and 2, tie those into a knot. Whoops. Okay. Then I'm going to take 2 and 3, tie those into a knot. Okay, and then 3 and 4. Okay. And there are those little knots. Now, more hypo cement or whichever glue you prefer, just a little bit. Okay. Now, I'm actually going to draw this on a piece of paper, okay, while we let this glue dry before we cut everything off. I'm going to show you how we're going to kind of zip up the end, okay? So, let me get a piece of paper here. Okay. So, let's look at what we've got, okay? We've got 3 beads on one end and 3 beads on the other end. Okay, so there's a bead, there's a bead, there's a bead. Okay, and when we bring the two together, this is what we'll have. Okay, and we haven't closed up the space yet. We're talking about closing up the space. Okay, so our thread is going to be exiting one of these beads, right, out on the edge. We're going to take that thread and we're going to go out that bead and we're going to turn around and go into the bead on the other end. Okay. When we come out of this bead, we're going to go across and go into this bead. That's a terrible arrow, but go into that bead, out this bead, down and into this bead. Okay. So we're doing, let's see, we're going this, 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 and this is where our thread will be exiting. Okay, then we're going to turn around and go back the other direction. So we'll go this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way, this way. Okay, so it's just a zip up of the two ends. I just want you to see that that's what the path is. Okay, we're going to come out of this bead, go into this bead, across, over, down, and out. Okay, just like that. So we won't go into this bead or into this bead until we come back and turn around and go back the other direction. Does that make sense? An artist too. I don't know. Look at that picture. That's a terrible, that is a terrible drawing. But I really want you to see, like, this is the zip up for the edges, for the ends. Now we're actually going to do it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in with our cutter tool. We're going to trim off these ends as close as we can get them. Okay, that's why the glue is super important. It's okay if you got a little bit left over. By the way, don't use your Italian cutter tools for cutting this. That's what I'm doing. And don't ever, ever do that. Do as I say, not as I do. Don't cut your working thread. Okay. If Wyatt saw me doing this, he would totally lose his mind. Do not cut your Wildfire with your cutter tool for wire. Okay. Now, all of those little knots, okay, these are going to go to the inside of your ring. Let me see if I've got one here I can show you. See all my knots on the inside? They're glued. They're not going to go anywhere, and you don't see them. That's just on a finished ring. So it's completely seamless until you're looking at the inside. Okay, that's where those knots are. So we have to actively kind of push those in as we are stitching up our ends. Okay, now let's see. So to make it look like the picture, my thread is coming out up here. Okay, don't tell Wyatt. Now I want to bring my two ends together. And I'm going to take my needle into the bead on the same side as the one that I'm exiting. And my needle will come up between those two beads, okay? Pull your thread so you can kind of see. It'll pull everything together and it'll make a lot more sense. Okay? I'm exiting that first. So I came out here and I went into this bead and I'm exiting between 1 and 2. Okay, now I'm going to take my needle, I'm coming up here across, okay, so I'm jumping back up here to where we started. I'm going into number 2, which is the second bead, if I can get my needle in there. Okay, and I'm taking my needle out between 2 and 3. Okay. And pull. Now I'm coming down, back down here to this side. I'm going between 2 and 3 to come out. Don't sew it to your finger. Okay, and pull. This, right? This is exactly what we did. Came out of this bead, came into this bead, okay? Jumped back up here to this row, went through this one, came out between these two, entered, and came out down here, right? It's just kind of like a stair step, Yeah, it's a zipping it up is exactly what it is. Now, as you pull your thread, you want to pull those beads together, pull the 2 rows together, and simultaneously kind of push all those knots to the inside. See how all my knots have gone to the inside? Okay. Now I'm going to go back the other direction. So thread's coming out here. I'm jumping up, going in to that first bead. Okay, but I'm coming out between 1 and 2. Nicole, you gotta be, there must be something that you're missing when you're doing your zip up, because the zip up is, to me, this is like way tighter than the around and round. Remember when we did the around and round because we didn't know what we were doing? Nicole knows what I'm talking about. We are actually going to do the around and round after we do this, okay? So now I'm just going back the other direction in that same kind of zip up fashion, right? Just going in the opposite direction. Whoops. And sewing my finger to it every single time. Okay. And that's going to make it nice and seamless for the most part. You've got your knots there on the inside. Okay. So you want to do that once or twice. Then you want to go around and around, and you don't have to do this part, but I do like to do this part. So I'm exiting out here. I'm going to jump up to this row, and instead of zipping around, I'm just going to go straight through. Ouch. I'm also going to stab myself. And it's getting a little snug in there because we've gone through these beads a few times now. Okay. So you may have to use your pliers to help push that needle through there. Okay, getting a little snug. Okay, so I just went straight through, and then I'm just going to jump up and go straight through. So I'm just doing a circle, right? And that's just some extra reinforcement. It's really not necessary, but I don't know, for whatever reason, I feel like it's a good thing to do. I might be wrong and just fooling myself, but that's the way I do it. All right, so now at this point, you're pretty much done. You do want to, oh gosh, please don't break a bead. Ugh, did you see how tough that was? Now you may want to thread in a few rows or weave in a few rows, right? To tie off, and then you can cut your thread. So just a little reinforcing, nothing fancy, just go in and out a couple of rows, right? Take your needle between that outer warp, make yourself a little half hitch knot. Thread it in. Okay. And thread one more row. And then all we have to do is just cut off our thread. Okay. I need new beading scissors. That's why I was using my cutter tool, because these scissors are really dull. And that's it. Now you can see all those knots are on the inside. If you are worried about those knots and you feel like they're not super secure, add another little bit of glue and sit your ring to the side for a while, right? Otherwise, you're done. That's it. That's all there is to it. And this is just a jumping off point. It does fit me. I know it does. hold on. So this is just a jumping off point because you can do a little picot edge on it. You can make it really wide. You could do other beading to it. You could bead to the surface of it. You can do all kinds of stuff once you get the base of your ring done. Then you can kind of get fun and funky cool with it. We, over on the Jewel Loom group, we added beads. We added chip beads to ours. So we've got the band, and then we have these fun chip beads. We made loops. So you really can do tons of things once you just get the base done. And the same thing is true with all of the other designs as well, right? You get your base done if it's a bracelet, and then you can bead on top of it. You can add crazy edging to it. You can do whatever you want to. It's just a matter of figuring out the base. And once you've got that base ready to go, and then you can really kind of branch out and make extra fun things, Not that a ring is not fun. I love just a plain beaded ring. Like, that's my favorite. I love it. Would be a cool thumb ring. I don't think it'll fit on my thumb. It will not. It would be a cool thumb ring though. I don't know, this one might. That one fits on my thumb. This one's a little bit bigger, just in a different color. And the seed beads are a little bit bigger. So this is the difference. So this one has size 8 seed beads. This one has size 6s. So you can see the difference in the beads here, but it's exactly the same. Gail says, do you finish a bracelet in the same way? You do not finish a bracelet in the same way unless you want it to be a cuff bracelet. Otherwise, you're going to have some sort of closure. And I'll show you the one that I have on my wrist right now. So this one I warped with hemp. I tied my warps together, tied myself a little knot, and then just added a button to the other end. But there are a lot of different options. You can use ribbon ends, ribbon crimps for the ends. You can use slide clasps for the ends. So you really have a lot of options when it comes to finishing off your bracelets. It's just a matter of playing around and deciding which one you like the best. Gia says, would this work with stretch cords? So that's actually a really common question. And the answer is yes, it can be done. I personally have never done it. The only reason that I kind of dislike the idea of the stretch cord is that the stretch cord makes big globby knots, right? So your knots are going to be a little bigger, and they have to be inside up against your hand, and it just might not be super comfortable. So that's really kind of the only thing about using the elastic cord or using any kind of thread that's bigger than Wildfire for a ring. That doesn't mean you can't do it for other things. I'm just saying for a ring, you have to be mindful of your knots and where they're going to go and how they're going to wear. So definitely take that into consideration. All right, I'm going to turn you guys around, and I'm going to grab some of the other loomed things that I have and show them to you just to kind of give you an idea of other things that are possible, okay? So let me turn you around.
And check the
microphone. So let me know if the sound is okay. And then I'm actually going to unhook myself because I've got to get out of my chair to get some of these other things. So I'm going to turn around. I'll be right back. It will be quiet for just a second, okay? Okay, guys, so sound is good. Okay, I'm gonna put the microphone back on. That'll make it even better. Okay, so just to show you guys a couple of other things that are possible with looms, okay? First and foremost, let me show you. So one of my favorite things to make on the loom is pendants. And I actually did this with artistic wire on the loom, okay? So instead of using thread, I used artistic wire, right? I did my beading with Wildfire and then hung all of this, and then you can hang this as a pendant. For those of you who are coming to Destination North Pole, we're doing something very similar to this. We're making a pendant, but we're using leather, okay? So there's that, right? That's possible on the loom. Other bracelets, just want to show you. So these big beaded loops, I loomed the bracelet on the loom and then added the loops with all of the funky fun extras. And this is a ribbon clasp, right? So it's just one of those little ribbon deals. Okay, so there's that. Slide clasps are super easy to use on the ends. You just take that first row of beads and slide it in there and close it up and you're good to go. Okay, so just so that you know jewelry wise what's possible on a loom. Okay, and then you can do fibers. So you can actually use fibers on the original Jewel Loom or any of the other looms that are available on Jewel Loom. So I made this little wall hanging, right? And this is all fibers. It's just yarn. You can see the back of it. That I did that on the small, I think I did this one on the Small Goddess, I believe. Actually, I think I did this on just the fiber loom. I don't know. Can't remember which loom. But there's that. This I definitely did on the fiber loom. And it's fibers and beads, which is a lot of fun. You can see, you can see the back. So all of that's done with yarn, but it's exactly the same as what we just did. It's just with fiber instead of beads. And then the large goddess, you can make really big pieces. I'm still working on this one, but it's all fibers. So this is just yarn. And then some different kinds of yarns down here. So you can, so this will be a wall piece, you know, just wall art when I get it finished. Definitely takes a little bit longer than making jewelry, but I love it because it's the same. It's exactly the same as making the jewelry. You can add beads to it, you can add funky fibers to it, and it's exactly the same techniques. So lot of fun. So if you're interested in learning how to loom, come on a grass skirt. That's what it looks like. She does look like a hula girl. If you're interested in learning more about looming, come and join us over on the Jewel Loom group. Hang out with us for the Jewel Loom Facebook Lives. Today we're doing a question and answer session. That's at 4 p.m. Eastern time. You got to come join the group first, and then you can get into the Facebook Live this afternoon. And you don't even have to have a loom yet, okay? Don't feel like, I don't have a loom, I can't come be part of the group. You can. Come be part of the group, hang out with us, see what the projects are, and figure out which loom best suits the needs that you have, because there are so many different looms to choose from. You want to make the right choice, and the only way you're going to make that choice is to kind of see what the options are, what the different things that you can do with the loom are, and where you kind of want to go with it. If you just want to stick to making jewelry, there's a loom for that. You know, I love making wide bracelets on my loom. It's my favorite. I do love the wall hangings because they're so free form, and it's really, that's like it's more of a hobby, whereas this is more of a job. You know, this is what pays my bills, whereas the wall art is really just a creative outlet for me. So, but that's just me. Has the bracelet kit been done yet, Donna? No, it has not been done, and Jules is waiting until everybody gets theirs, and then we are going to go through that bracelet. I'm like, please, everybody get your kit. I'm so ready. I want to put that bracelet together so bad. I have all my beads ready to go. So yeah, that's another thing, guys. There are kits. There's a bracelet kit that is available on the Jewel Loom site that we're all going to be putting together as a group. It's an easy project, but it's a really fun and pretty one. And then, like I said, there are new things on the horizon with me and Jules. Hopefully as soon as next week. You don't want to miss that. All of the information will be posted in the Sarah Ellis Designs community page as well as on my business Facebook page. But if you want even more information, insider information about what is coming with Jewel Loom and Sarah Ellis Designs, come and join the community, and you won't regret it. I promise. Fingers crossed that things go smoothly and it all happens next week. Okay. All right, guys, that's it for me today. At least for here. You can catch me over on the Jewel Loom group at 4 p.m. Eastern time if you want to see more looming and have questions answered. Yes, Maggie says, are you and Jules on this afternoon? Did I miss that earlier? We absolutely are on this afternoon. It is a question and answer kind of live. So if you've got questions about looming, come ask them. Right? If you guys are interested in buying a loom, feel free to use my affiliate link. You absolutely do not have to, but it is always appreciated if you do. I do make a small commission off of all of those sales. If you are left-handed, you can still loom. I promise you. And it actually, I've actually found that people who are left-handed have a much easier time with it because you actually do work left to right. So it may be much easier for you. Maggie says, cool, I'm coming. I will see you there. I will see you there. All right, guys, that's it. If I don't see you later this afternoon, I will see you next week. Same time, same place with another fun project for you guys. Enjoy your weekend. Bye, guys.